Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Text Podcast. My name is Voga and I am very excited for today's episode. But anyways, I'm sorry, I like jumped the gun a little bit. My name is Voga and I am Voga on Instagram.
And I'm Ry, aka Vocal Fry. And I'm Ry, aka the Misty Soul Mystic, also on Instagram.
And today we have such a special guest. This person is someone that I talk about on the podcast a lot, y'all. I talk about this person all the time. I bring up my friends all the time on the podcast. But this one is a very special one to me. I met them actually we're going on 3 years now since we met, which is crazy. That just kind of occurred to me. This February is actually going to be our 3rd year as friends. This person has grown to be one of my closest friends. I consider them my brother. We are each other's counsel. We're very, very close. We are just really good. We're just girlfriends. We're best of friends. We have Cody Nichols here with us, who is going to talk to us about their practice. Cody's pronouns are he, him, so I'm just going to go ahead and just throw that out there. Cody's pronouns are he, him. We are going to be talking very specifically about about a topic that I specifically wanted to talk about for a very, very long time, especially because with the group of friends that I have around me who are very not Catholic, and I've brought that up before on my on some of the rants that I've gone through on the podcast, and it's about time that we've had Cody, who's kind of like a centerpiece to the group of friends that I am with all the time. But before we get into that, Cody, go ahead and introduce yourself, say hi, and tell us what you're all about.
Sure, happy to. As Voga was saying, my name's Cody. I he, him's fine, although I'm cool with whatever. Voga's used a myriad of them for me in certain situations, but
it depends on the context.
Depends on the context. So I'm really excited to be here. I've been, I know that Voga's mentioned, me coming on the show a few times because, my praxis is something I've been involved with for well over 20 years. And it's kind of like the focal point of what I do in our community. That was kind of the centerpiece of it, and it's grown since then. But it did start off from my occult practice, which I guess if we want to delve into that, I could best describe. It's very it's very. But I like to say an Infernal Hekatean Luciferian, or just general left-hand path, just to make it easy, just THP, or TLP, sorry. In which case, that is, to condense, it is primarily it's a Hecatean structure in the sense of it's not like witchcraft per se. It's more devotional sorcery. So I base a lot of what I do through PGM practice and Hellenic framework, a Kemetic framework. But I utilize demonic spirits very heavily in my practice, as I feel personally in mine. It's they are the tools, I guess, at the employ of bigger beings, such as in this instance we would say Hecate. And then Luciferian because I think that that kind of embodies the philosophy that accompanies my my practice, in the sense that it's very Gnostic. I'm always into obtaining more knowledge, and I, at the same time, while I revere the spirits, I don't bow to anything. So I am my own power structure, and I can do anything. so so
Okay.
that's kind of it. If we boil it down, I'm more than happy to go into depth about things, because I know Vogue and I have talked for hours on end about it. So
Yes, so that's a really good, just a little bit of a sneak peek of what this
mhm.
episode is going to be into. But before we get into the fun stuff, let's do a little bit of a check-in. Ry, how are you, my darling co-host?
I'm good. I actually this past weekend of this recording, I finished my semester of grad school, so I'm officially halfway through my program. I have one
Yes.
paper left. She said just turn it in before Christmas, so I'm gonna turn that in the day before Christmas probably. But yeah, it's wild to think that it's already been like a year and a half of being in school, and just another year and a half to go. Um, and I feel like things are on the come up. I feel like this year's been a dumpster fire and still is, but I'm having like high hopes about what's to come in the next coming months and coming year and whatnot. I don't know if I told you, but I got a new job, but I start in January, so I will be reincorporating back into the workforce after being unemployed for 6 months. Bittersweet feeling,
I was about to say
but
that sounds. I was about to congratulate you, but I was like, oh, not really.
I know. Yeah, thankfully it's only part time, so I'll still have I'll still have some free time between work and school to like do my thing. But
Mhm.
yeah, I just cooked some chicken adobo, which I'm gonna fuck up after this recording.
Mm.
So I'm chilling. How are you?
I am thriving. I finally feel like everything has slowed down and I can breathe again, and it really came like it really feels like that this week, especially. I actually just had like Austin and I have like once a month we have like an hours long conversation. We kind of check in with each other, and just the center of our conversation for this one was like how insane. And Cody was part of a lot of like just was secondhand witness to how insanely busy I was for the last like 2.5 months, because Cody was part of it. Like
Yeah,
Cody was in
yeah.
Rocky Horror with me, and then right after Rocky Horror was Blasphemy, and
hmm
then because like I had more things to do for this Blasphemy, like it was just a lot. I put it on myself. I mean, I explain this all the time because I'm a messy, flighty little Gemini. I can't. I get so anxious when my hands aren't moving, when my feet aren't moving, when my brain isn't moving. So I do it to myself. It's the ADHD. It's the air in me where I'm just like I can't. I need to be moving. I need to be doing something, or I get anxious, right? But now I actually feel like I'm slowing down a little bit, which is nice. Like I started like sitting down and reading books, which is something that I haven't done in months. Like I haven't read for fun in a very, very long time. Something that wasn't like an anthropology book or a witchcraft book or something that wasn't feeding into my practice. Just like a fiction, something that I actually wanted to read. I read The Silent Patient in like 2 days because I was just like, I'm loving this. I'm loving just like sitting here and just like reading. So now I'm just like, oh, I feel like I can breathe. And like I'm shopping for Christmas stuff. Like people like I'm crafting some jewelry and some rosaries for some friends of mine. So that's really nice. It's calming me down. Like I just feel like I can just like slow down and breathe a little bit. Because once New Year's happens, Cody and I are going to be sitting down and planning for the next one. So I'm ready to get the ball rolling. But like as of right now, just because like the holidays, I feel like it's like slowing down, and I feel calm again. You know what I mean? I think I need those like recharge days, those recharge months, where I don't have to feel like I'm doing like a million things at the same time. But then also at the same time, when I'm doing a million things at the same time, I'm like thriving, and like I feel really productive, and I feel like I'm doing something important. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a it's it really is a double-edged sword sometimes with my life, because I want to be doing something, but at the same time I know it's not good for me all the time. And those like times of like calmness and the times of stillness are something that I need to kind of really relish in, because it doesn't come very often. That's what she said. And so I'm trying to kind of just like live in this slowness, live in the calmness before the storm starts again, which I'm very excited for. The beginning of this year, I know it's going to be really busy, and I'm very excited for the beginning of this year, but at the same, or beginning of next year. But yeah, I'm okay. I've calmed down. I'm relaxing a little bit. I'm taking more time to spend time with myself. I'm taking care of my physical self a little bit better. I'm trying to get more sleep. I'm trying to take care of my skin and my hair. I'm trying to be as healthy on every aspect, you know, paying more attention to, you know, my skincare routine and my hair routine, and trying to get more water in my system. So I'm just paying attention a little bit more, because I'm not split between like 6 different things at the same time. But yeah, I'm okay. I'm really I'm good. I'm nice and happy and calm. But with that, Cody, how are you? How I know that you've been busy. You've been busy. You've just been
Yeah.
busy as I am. So
Yeah,
how are you?
yeah. I think it's actually like really wild how much I parallel what you're doing. Same, like exactly,
I know.
almost to a T. So yeah, as Voga mentioned, it's been super busy for me for a long time. You know, we did have the Rocky Horror Show, which was great, but it was a lot. It
It
was
was a lot.
heavy. It was a
Yeah.
lot. It was heavy, and I'm really happy I did it, but I can't commit to it anymore. One creative project at a time. So
Yeah. Lesson learned. Yeah.
just one at a time.
Yeah.
And then of course we had Blasphemy, which is the market event that my partner, my wife Komowich, and I started, but now it has grown, and we do have the help of Voga and Franny and United Society of Sin, all of us in the mix. And then immediately after that, you know, we Koma and I took off for Japan for 16 days. So we just got back from Japan this past week. It was so nice. We did it twice this year. So we went in Sakura season, and then we went for fall, and it was really cool. So I'm back, and I'm like you, although I think we're like sister signs though, so there's some parallel there. But like I immediately like, well, I got to start on Blasphemy, but I'm not gonna let myself.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna like I'm just like, I need to open up vendor applications. I'll wait. And I'm like, actually, I don't want to collect any money till after the first year, because let's keep taxes where they are.
Let's keep taxes where they are.
Let's
No, I
keep
totally
taxes
agree.
where they are. And you know, and yeah, I just want to slow down and like kind of collect myself, because I do go pretty heavy too, and it's been really nice. You know, settling back into works pretty easy right now. I've actually got to play some Baldur's Gate, which I've been wanting to do for months now. So I've been able to play video games like every, you know, straight white golden retriever boy does. So, and then, you know, kind of just let myself be. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's a really what you're saying is like we really truly are a pair when it comes to the way that we do business, because I mean, Ry, you know, I am so extremely like detail orientated, and I'm so fastidious when it comes to things that I want to get done. It's like it's so God, I'm so anal retentive, where I don't have the right to sit down because I'll suck up everything. You know, I like, I get it. Like I get, like, that's why like truly like Cody and I can really relate on a certain level, because we're just so like active in our aspirations and our dreams. Like we want things to happen, and we want to do it now, and we have all of these ideas, and we need to do all of these things. Like I'm already thinking about how I'm going to produce the next drag show for Blasphemy. Like I'm already thinking about what I want to do, how I want to do it, how I want to host it. You know what I mean? It's just, it's an endless cycle, but I love it.
I know I have to put together a costume, right? Maybe. Do I have to? We'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, don't get me all excited. So based on what we've talked about so far, we know that Cody does have a very particular praxis, a very particular cosmology.
Mhm.
But also Cody is, in his own right, a scholar. He truly is a wealth of knowledge, and I can speak for me and my friends when we say that. There is basically nothing. Probably the only really thing that Cody can't really hold a candle to is Catholicism. Maybe that's just my deal.
Nope.
But everything else, like the structure of a ritual and the structure of a ceremony and the structure and the way to do a certain working is something that our friends and also myself have seek Cody for counsel on how to do these things. A lot of the rituals that I've shared with you, Ry, were based on things that I've had to talk to Cody about and how I wanted to structure it, and things that I've seen him do firsthand or secondhand were inspired by these structures. And I think that I think I spoke to you about this before, Ry. Oh no, we spoke about this, Ry, on the panel, the one we just did with those incredible group of practitioners, where there's a lot of parallels when it comes to ceremony, when it comes to ritual, and that's why those structures really work. But we already know practices, they have parallels all the time. They parallel each other all the time. It's human nature to do these certain ways, and how to put a ritual together. But Ry, before we get into it, Ry, do you have any questions for Cody to start us off?
I mean, oh God, so many. There's one thing you mentioned during your intro, Cody. You said PGM. What is that? What does that stand for?
So the PGM is the Greek Magical Papyri, and so I think in Greek it's like Papyrus Greco, whatever it may be, but PGM. And to the point, exactly what you're saying is when you see the parallels of ritual, it's because a lot of it does stem from PGM, and that is true in regards to Hebrew, Hellenic, Kemetic, which then formed into Christian ritual. Even modern Christian ritual. It's like there's still roots in this system that was widely accepted as like the way to do it back in antiquity with what is the collected works within the PGM. So a lot of what those similarities you see is like sometimes, more often than not, they're rooted in what is in the PGM. And then you also get into Gnostics and Kabbalah and Qliphoth and stuff like that. So there's parallels all because it's all kind of from the cradle of civilization where we were all doing things, at least as far as Western practices go. Eastern practices are different, of course, but as far as Western practice and Middle Eastern practice goes, they're coming from the same angle in a lot of ways. So there's going to be a lot of similarities there.
And how did your practice come to be? What brought you to where you are today with what you do?
Sure. Well, I was lucky to grow up now, and as Voga mentioned, one thing I don't know about is Catholicism. I'm from the South. We don't have Catholics there, so it was all Pentecostals and Southern Baptists and Methodists and so on and so forth. So, but I was very fortunate to grow up in a household that had a lot of occult influence. So my grandparents were they were ceremonial practitioners in their own sense through Order of the Eastern Star and Masons, and I was exposed to the structures of those. How do I say it? Not like the actual rituals themselves, but to how it kind of works for them from a very young age. In addition to that, my grandmother's maiden name is Casey, and so I'm directly related to Edgar Casey as well. And so that was someone my grandma would always tell me about. She's like, oh, your great uncle, Edgar, and then also Walter Casey. They were just like, oh yeah, they were witches, so on and so forth. They did this, and so they were always really open-minded about it, and it was never like a bad thing. It was never a bad thing. Occult practice. It wasn't necessarily what the rest of my family did, but it was never something that was not something that I could be interested in. And luckily, my small town of Shelbyville, Kentucky, we had an actual occult shop there from when I was very young. This was like early '90s, mid '90s. That was in this little country town that I started learning about things, and then as I progressed, being country people, there's a lot of Appalachian folk magic that a lot of people aren't even aware of. Herbalism is super strong. It's like, oh, you got a stomach ache? Well, go out there, pick the dandelion leaves, just the leaves, not the flowers. Pick your dandelion leaves, make your tea out of that. Using herbs to treat things. And then in addition to that, I know this sounds like I'm just piling things on, but in addition to that, there's a strong, in my part of Kentucky, which was Shawnee land, there's a strong current of Native American, I don't like to say mysticism, but there's influence on things. And being farmers and living on the land and stuff like that, you have a reverence for the land in a way that made me kind of, I guess you could say, lowercase spiritual about it, that kind of just opened me up to it. And then as I got older, it became more scholarly, as Voga mentioned. I just wanted to study. Went to college, pre-med, hated it. Changed it to my major, history, hated it. Changed my focus to religious studies. And so I studied it in school, and then had to get a real job. So went from there. But yeah, it was just I was lucky to be taught to think properly and to have the free reign to pursue what interested me from a very young age. And I was punk, so I was just like, nah, Satan's pretty cool. So
That's awesome. I love how open your family was to it, because I feel like, at least speaking from my personal experience, growing up in a family that's Catholic, less traditional Catholic but still Catholic, I definitely don't think they would have been open to what I do now as much back then as they are now. So it's amazing to grow up in an open-minded family like that. And my next question, I'm curious, how did you get to Hecate specifically? How did she become such an integral part of your practice?
Well, I think that it was just through scholarship mostly, and just being able to kind of connect the dots and seeing that there's a certain trend that you see throughout most praxis from what I was interested in. And I've always been left-hand path about things. I've always been very left-hand path about things, not to the degree of being the Slytherin or anything stupid like that, but to the sense that I was like, I am of the gods. I am a celestial being in my own right. I have power. And I can do anything, and I was never afraid of anything. There nothing in the spiritual realm scared me. So it felt like I just kind of gravitated towards it. The chthonic spirituality, not necessarily Hekatean specific, but even Hermes or Eurynomus, and then of course starting off young and in high school, when you're just like, well, I'm clearly a Satanist. So as I got more mature, I found that there were actual legitimate spiritual frameworks that felt right for me, that matched my fuck you mentality of being just too smart for his own good teenager, that liked to read a lot, to being just more than just some edgelord kids that wrote 666 on my Trapper Keeper.
Right.
So yeah, Hekate is just kind of what I landed on. And I don't like to say that ooh, they called me. I don't necessarily feel that the divine are out there, not necessarily, not for me anyway, but that's what I was drawn to. And that's kind of where it kind of took off for me. And then in learning the actual praxis, sorry, of a lot of these frameworks, Hekate was something that was much larger than what most people would think too. For example, people being like, oh, Aphrodite is the goddess of love, and Zeus is the god of thunder. He's the king of gods. And then people would be like, well, what is Hekate the goddess of? What is Hekate the goddess of? And first and foremost, Hekate wasn't goddess. Hekate is Titan, bigger, primordial.
Right.
But there was never anything that people were just like, oh, well, she's obviously the deity of blank. A lot of people say witchcraft, but that's too broad. So what I've able through my studies and the relationships that I've been able to build and learnings through scholars and authors like Jack Grail, Jack Grail, and PGM and things like that. It's more of, this is Hekate being the actual spiritual embodiment of transition, of moving from one thing to the next, of liminality. So in my mind, I sat there and I was like, well, that's everywhere, right? Like this, just me moving my hands, that's transitioning from this point in space to this point in space. So how can I not revere the actual embodiment of what transition is? And then that's kind of where it rooted. And then of course growth and the concepts of anagnorisis and peripetia, learning and then obtaining knowledge and things like this. These are all things that are transitions from one state of being to another. So like the governess or the governor or whatever, gender doesn't exist in this sense in my opinion, but that's a transition, and that transition is a sacred thing, and that's kind of where that fell for me.
It's really fascinating your perspective on how Hekate actually became a part of your life, because you mentioned how it's like you don't feel like spirits are kind of like picking and choosing, like you're right for me, you're right for me, you're right for me, you're right for me. Because for me, when it comes to Mary, it's very much the opposite, because I wasn't seeking her in any way. Well, that's not necessarily true. I wasn't seeking her actively. Like I knew that she was kind of around because I just believed in her, because she was a spirit that was just part of my upbringing. And there was just something in me that wanted to, I guess it kind of goes back and forth. It really depends on your perspective, because that story that I told years ago when we first started this podcast about how like my first like true interaction with Mary was something that happened because I was inclined to go to mass, or I wasn't, not to mass, but go to church and go to a church and pray. And then I had this experience that kind of like presented her to me. So I guess it might have been a little bit of both, where I felt like there was a little piece of her kind of like telling me that I needed to do this, I needed to go and experience this, and that she was going to show herself to me, which she did. But I also think that it also kind of depends on the spirit. I don't think it's necessarily something that, it's not part of Hekate's vibe. And I know just based on the things that people have told me about her, that's not what she's trying to do. She's got other things to do. It's not her, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's not her kind of it's not her prerogative to be a mother.
No.
It is not her prerogative to coddle. It is not her prerogative to necessarily protect for the sake of doing so. When Mary is very much the opposite of that. Mary will seek you out because she feels like she needs to. She's very motherly. She's sometimes very much kind of overbearing, where she knows she knows her place, and she puts herself there regardless of whether you want her there or not. But that's just personally, that's how I see it. And I know that not all spirits act that way, especially primordial spirits, and spirits who aren't human, because Mary was human. So therefore, Hekate doesn't experience human experiences, doesn't understand human experiences, and therefore doesn't feel human emotions, as Mary does, where Mary does feel like, oh yeah, I can overstep, I can place myself where I feel like I should be, because I am a mother and I feel like I should act like one, as opposed to Hekate, who is a spirit who that's not her purpose, that's not their purpose, to exist, so it's an interesting juxtaposition, or it's not an interesting juxtaposition, it's an interesting comparison, between the kind of the behavior of the spirits and how they present themselves, or how they manifest themselves into people's lives.
Right. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, in the sense that, like, it is, well, there's a lot of variables at play, right? So one could argue that I'm just, I have spiritual selective hearing. One could argue that, there's like, well, there were signs were all around, you just didn't see it. But I would actually say that it's kind of close to what you're saying, is that these, we're using a term of general approach of spirit. They're not the same. Like, they're not the same. So like what, plane of existence or dimension, or however you want to look of it, about it, exists far out, where I would personally place Hecate isn't the same as what I would place Mary. Now, in the sense of what you're describing, given that Mary has experienced being human, or being in our realm of existence as an entity, and moved past that and been able to, for lack of better words, thrive and be good for people. There is that familiarity that can be recognized when there is a need, and in that sense, sure, absolutely, I don't see why they couldn't seek you out. But again, as you mentioned, for something like Hekate or Helios or these other hypercosmic things, the Erebus, or anything like that, like the mundane is not their concern, in my belief. And I think a way that I always broke this down, I think that I discussed this with you once upon a time, is why people feel like, for example, demons, because demons play a big part in what I do as well. Why people are just like, well, why are demons so interferent? It's because if you look at things in like a circle, right? At the center of the circle is our perspective. That's our experience as human beings, and we are on this vibration right here, like right here. And as you expand outwards into this spiritual realm, moving outwards, you have our ancestral spirits and land spirits, things that are connected to the material plane. And then as you move further out, you have divine intelligence, which is, as you may be aware, daemon is Greek for divine intelligence. That's the term demon. That's what that is. That is where you're going to get your your Baals and your Flerius and so on and so forth. And then as you spin beyond that, then you get to your celestials, which can interact, but they're far removed from us. As anyone that works with angels are scary, right? They don't have that. They're far removed from the human condition, that they don't always recognize the human need. That doesn't mean that they can't be helpful, but your emotions don't translate. And then go higher into what in my personal opinion would be considered deity. And then beyond that is where we get more hypercosmic. And then beyond that, there is, in my personal term is Satanatum. That is the creation that's built forth from the void of Erebus. So that's why certain deities can kind of pick us and call to us, is because their vibrations are more in tune with us. So we're more aware of it, and they're more aware of us, and they understand our experience a little bit better, and can see when we might be in need a little bit more than something much larger.
Yeah, the whole conversation about, especially with angels are interesting, because like there are folks who do venerate angels, but not in a Catholic sense, not through a Catholic lens, because I would argue that yes, angels are scary, and angels are not necessarily creatures that are necessarily easy to venerate and therefore easy to work with, because they don't work with you. They work for themselves, right? And it's very transactional when it comes to angels, depending on your perspective. But from a Catholic lens and from a Catholic perspective, like the angel that we call like Gabriel, you know, from a Catholic perspective, you know, the one that we call Gabriel, the one that we venerate from a Catholic, is a very easy angel to actually work with. It's very gentle, a very gentle current, as is with Raphael. Raphael is a very, very easy angel to start a relationship with. Those two angels I've actually called upon numerous times. Ry and I actually have that in common, where we actually venerate Raphael, because Raphael, for me personally, Raphael is a patron saint of healthcare. So I take Raphael to work with me. I work with Raphael. I've crafted sigils before that I draw on my patients with my finger, and I say prayers in my head while I'm working modalities with them, and it's very, very effective, and it's very and it's something that it didn't really have to work super hard to do. And it wasn't a scary experience, but something that was very difficult for me to do was cultivate a relationship with Saint Michael. Saint Michael is very difficult to kind of crack. I still haven't done it. And I've also actually put it on the back burner, because I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to deal with you right now, dude. Like, this is like, I've been doing this for over a year. I haven't even, I keep feeding his altar, but I don't do anything actively with him anymore, because I'm just like, okay, I don't think now is the time. But also, I think at the same time, with the angels that we call upon, that we call these, you know, the Catholic, through the Catholic lens, I think Catholics just kind of have kudo points for being Catholic in regards to these specific creatures, these specific Catholic angels. I don't think that they're synonymous with all angels. I do think that there is a variation when it comes to angels, like someone who works with with you know, Archangel Michael, and someone who works with Saint Archangel Michael, those are two different currents. Those are two different, even though it might be the same being, they're calling upon them differently and also working with them differently. So I know that there is a differentiation when it comes to, and also you're right, like angels are scary because angels aren't human. They don't experience the human experience, and also they're really militant, especially when it comes to Michael. He is scary when it comes to trying to get things done, and he's very specific, and he's also very aggressive. He's, you know, he is literally the embodiment of fire, you know, so it's like it's difficult to kind of to break that. But then there's also, like, if you can't break an angel, like, we always like go to a saint, because a saint is human, right? They've experienced the human experience, and they're much more inclined to help, because they, in their living lives, they were helping humans, and then now in their death, it's easier, they're much more inclined to help you in that way, you know. So that's just the perspective that I wanted to kind of throw out there. But yeah.
I think that it's interesting that you used a descriptor that I would actually say is 100% in line. It's transactional. So this is, you know, everyone's like, oh, you got to pay for it. Now, of course, I don't subscribe to the Wig and Read or the Law of Three or anything like that. I'm too old for that. So I'm too old for that. But what we have experienced is, specifically, as you mentioned, when you interact with these higher frequency entities such as celestials, which, you know, I think that I use the term celestial because I think that it incorporates what, you know, from the Catholic lens of angel to what else would be on that frequency. I like using the term vibration and frequency because I think string theory is pretty accurate. So like I tie in my ideas of string theory into my spirituality. So but from there, like, yeah, it's just like you being happy doesn't really matter. But if there's a transaction that you can give that will satisfy this being, then you're going to be in favor. And in most cases, you know, what have we learned through our practice is that the divine revel in the speaking of their names. So like if you know, just that's why like you know, Hellenic practice and specifically in a lot of these older frameworks, you learn your epithets. You learn your epithets, with Hekate specifically, Thonia, Brimo, Bukolos, whatever, all of those epithets, because they revel in the speaking of their names. And you speaking their name gives them power, because there's power in the word, the spoken word. So, a thought is powerful, but when you speak it aloud, it becomes independent of you. So speaking those aloud gives them it. They like it, so for lack of better words. And then of course when and in my opinion, that's kind of a definition of like sorcery to a degree, as opposed to what I would view witchery. And then there, your acts of devotion as well. Devotional sorcery, where not only are you speaking their names and their epithets, but you're actually giving your energy to them as well, which is why for example, your offerings, denomination doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're giving a quarter or a $20 bill. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the divine, but it's your understanding of your sacrifice that matters, because that can be felt. And that's how you gain favor with these higher beings, and they can, in my opinion, bend things into your favor. I don't think anybody's out there granting wishes for you, unless you do find a djinn or a genie. That'd be cool, but I haven't yet. So so most of the time I think that it's just like they will help you get the job done. They'll help you and show you favor, and if you want to call it luck, or if you want to call it turning the the currents of the river that we flow down until the fates cut our string, whatever it may be. They move things in your direction. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my translation of how through my experience. So that it's very transactional, whereas I do see with lower vibrations, land spirits and things like that, they can have a more, it doesn't take as, it's less transactional, because you can actually develop a relationship, and then I feel like they actually pick up on your feelings more, specifically ancestral spirits, specifically. Your feelings matter more in that sense, because they've experienced them as well.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I had a question.
go ahead.
It fucking flew out of my mind. I can't remember if it had to do with angels or something else, but sidetrack. Different question. To the extent
it's like talking to Franny, huh, Cody?
Honestly, no, to the extent that you're willing to share, Cody, I'm curious, what does your practice look like on a day-to-day basis? I know you touched on earlier a lot of ceremony and ritual, but again, to whatever extent you're willing to share, could you help our listeners understand kind of what this Hecatean Infernal Luciferianism looks like on a practical level?
Of course. So typically for me, what I do is I have my specific altars or shrines. A lot of people will be very definitive, like this is the definition of an altar, this is the definition of a shrine. I don't care. It's a special space dedicated for whom I'm venerating. I present my offerings, for Hekate, for example. I recognize Deipnon. I recognize I operate on a lunar framework, so Deipnon's important. Waning moon's important for other reasons, but I recognize dates of importance, what day of the week, and just speaking the epithets. Like I said, in my experience, it's the actual taking the time and the effort of speaking the epithets, and for me personally, a lot of the pacts that I have formed, whether they be demonic or whether they be, with higher beings such as Hecate or Hermes or whomever it may be, I include scholarship in my pacts. So, in my agreements or my working, so the act of me learning about this is in itself an act of devotion.
Absolutely.
Because I'm giving my energy. Now, there's also like other things out there too, specifically with like your more Germanic practices too. It's like even like, you know, I know there's some people out there that are, you know, Fenrir and stuff like that, you know, Fenrir's wolf and stuff like that. You know, even in Kerberos, which I venerate Kerberos as a protector. The giving of blood, of course. There's so much power in your blood. So typically for me, it incorporates, I do have wardings and stuff, demonic wards. I feed them typically weekly with my own blood. And yeah, just regular acts of devotion is really what it comes down to. Not necessarily anything specific. It's just an act of devotion that I recognize as an act of devotion, and that I have said this is an act of devotion. So.
Yeah, totally. See, going back to what we've talked about before in regards to, I mean, this is not specifically a witchcraft conversation, but if we talk about witchcraft just like in the general sense, the witchcraft is a craft of need, right? You don't craft for the sake of crafting, which is not synonymous with practicing, right? Just practicing for the sake of practicing. I think that's important, but doing magic for the sake of doing magic, I think, is important, but just doing it for the sake of, I don't know, other than learning and being able to do it, and you know, I think there is a need that is necessary, and then that's kind of like how I kind of navigate now with how I've kind of grown in my practice. Like for example, Cody, the ritual that we did at Blasphemy was the first rite that I've performed in months, because there has never been a need for it. You know, I don't do rites for the sake of doing rites. I do it because, well, first of all, it's exhausting. Like I don't have I don't have the magical capacity to do it all the time. And also, you know, those things have to be written. You know, those things have to be, there has to be a reason. There's a meaning behind everything that we do. And I'm just speaking for myself. There's a meaning behind everything that I do, especially because I wrote that right. You know, I wrote that consecration. I wrote that protection spell. I wrote that prosperity spell. And it's not something, now that I have it, I know that I have the access to be able to perform it again. I want to alter it a little bit. There are things that I want to change that I didn't think worked very well. But at the same time, you know, I'm not going to be performing a 30-minute rite every week for the sake of doing it. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of like a crock pot. You kind of, when you do the magic, like you want to set it and forget it. You know, let the magic work. Let the magic do its magic, right? So I think there is this I mean, the conversation kind of like weaned down a little bit, but especially like a couple of years ago when we talked about the all we saw on the internet, especially on infographics, do the magic, always do the magic, keep your, and it caused this magical burnout where people were just like, I can't do this every day. Like I can't do these huge elaborate rituals every single day. I can't do these spells every single day just for the sake of maintenance. You know what I mean? Like do something that is like long term, so that like just simplify your life. Like it's like even right now, like I've simplified my devotional space to a corner of, like not even my workspace. My workspace when I actually do magic, it's like a corner of my desk where that's all I've given myself, because that's all I need. Because if like, for me personally, with the way that I work, if I have all of these things to maintain, I won't maintain it. Like I just can't do it. It's just something that I can't commit to it, which makes my magic falter. It makes my magic fail, because like I just can't do it. But going back to it, it's like what I've learned over the last couple of years is that, you know, witchcraft and any sort of like spiritual practices, it is something of need. Devotion is different. A devotional practice is not synonymous with a magical practice, because magical practice is something, like I said, it is a craft of need, is a working of need. But something that is devotional, that you actually, because there is a spell that is devotional. You can have a spell that is devotional. I will do this prosperity spell every single week if I devote myself to you, or if I receive results from you. That's different, right? So I don't know where I was going with that, but like what I was trying to say is that, you know, the day-to-day practice of someone that is some sort of a sorcerer, like what Cody mentioned, or like me, who identifies as a folk witch, is I am not doing these things every single day. I do my rosary whenever I feel like I can, or I try to do as much as I possibly can. I say my prayers over my food. That's something that I got really, really good at, Ry. You'd be so proud of me. I've gotten really, really good at praying over my food and praying over the things that I get every single day, and showing gratitude. But that's not necessarily spellcraft. That's not writing a ritual. That's not performing a ceremony. That's just devotional everyday stuff. That is part of the mundane. That has become part of my mundane practice, is doing those like everyday little things. And like what Cody said, every single time you say their name, it is an act of they revel in it. Like, they really do. That is what they want from you. Spirits love the PR, right? Every single time you talk about you talk about them, like, that is what they want. They want to gives them the magic that they're able to deliver is taken from you being able to say their name with reverence and veneration. So yeah, that's, I don't know, that was all over the place, but
no, it wasn't all over the place. It made perfect sense. In which it's funny because as you've known me these years, it's like one of the first things when people talk to me about magic, I'm just like, well, I'm not a witch. I've always said, I was like, I'm not a witch. I might utilize witchcraft, but I'm not a witch. Most of mine is devotional, and that's like my bread and butter, though. It's like you're talking about ritual. I live for it. I live for ritual. Like I will write rituals all day. Like I will make rituals all day, and I do. And as Voga mentioned, I help all my friends whenever they're asked to help put together rituals. And we've performed rituals at Blasphemy, whether it be the prosperity protection ritual at this most recent Blasphemy that was conducted by Voga, Franny, and Adrian, or even which we didn't do this past time, but the rites of reclamation and renunciation, which is has historically been kind of like a pillar of what we are all about with Blasphemy. Which is a very Luciferian ritual. But I love ritual. I love it. I love it. I love the...
I like the pomp and circumstance of it. Like,
that's...
yeah, it's very drag. It's very camp. It's very... I love the textiles. I love there is magic, and there is importance, and there is significance in the performative aspect of it. That's important. Like when I did my ritual, when we did our ritual, there was this part where I was like, I need to use Vesta powder. I want to use it because it's just so cool to use. It's so fucking cool to use. When you see that shit burn, it turns into this big old cloud of smoke, and it's gorgeous. It is so gorgeous, and it cleanses the entire space. The spiritual side of it is awesome, but just like the visual aesthetic part of it is just it's everything that you expect out of a ceremony, right? It's something that you just there is importance in being able to show the spirits, like, look at what I'm doing for you. Look how beautiful this is, and look at the words that I'm saying for you.
Yeah, I think that, like, specifically with sorcery rituals and things like that, there are certain things that you do that are acts of compulsion. That's kind of how we would describe it, as compulsion. And your theater that you're performing is in itself an act of compulsion. You're making what you're doing attractive, because there's a couple ways that I've had this phrase, and I think that one that I kind of through what I've learned from Jack Grail, for example, over the years, is one thing is, like, say you're in like a room, right? You're at a party, and there's someone over there in the corner, and you say their name, right? They might be like, oh, okay, well, maybe this person's got, maybe there's 4 people with the same name here, right? But then you say their whole name, right? And then you say, like, for example, if Vogue was at a party and they say Cody, there aren't that many Codys, but let's say there are. So I'd just be like, oh, it's probably another one. If someone says Cody Nichols, then I'm like, oh, okay, well, where'd that come from? If someone says, Cody Nichols, partner of Coma, who runs Blasphemy, who blah 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 blah, I'm gonna know exactly who the fuck you're talking to, and I'm gonna be like, what do you want? so the more that you can draw that attention from whatever you're doing there, the more focus can be on you. And yes, that those compulsory actions is the theater of ritual. It is the calling of the epithets, and then we even get into our evocations, and the idea of threat narrative, that was one thing that I was the only thing that I've ever been hesitant of in ritual and practice was threat narratives, which I thought was disrespectful. I thought threat narrative was disrespectful, specifically when I venerated demonic and Hekate and stuff like that, using threat narrative. Which, if you guys are aware, I'm sure, but for those that aren't, threat narrative is basically threatening the deity to say, hey, if you don't do what I ask, this is going to be the consequence. Now, it's not like it's never been like, for example, the cry of the call of the waning moon from the PGM, which is one of the best frameworks. Don't do it exactly for one, but it's a great framework for baneful work, for cursing. Which I'm inherently the guy that people ask about that too, but it's the threat that you're saying is like, if you do not do this for me, then this will be the direct result. And in which case, in this one, for example, it's like if you wear the god face in this, so you're channeling. So it's very, you're channeling an entity, you're wearing a god face, or safe, whatever you want to call it, based on your lens. But in this instance, you're petitioning Hekate to carry out your will, or Selene, or whomever it may be, as Isis will not see her son if this isn't done. If my will isn't done, then I will not venerate your name. It's stuff like that. It's not like, if you don't do this, I'll beat you up. Like, it's not like that type of threat narrative. So it took me like some actual understanding of what threat narrative actually means to someone who doesn't know, to an entity that doesn't know the human condition, to actually be okay with it. Because at first I was very apprehensive. I was like, I don't want to be mean. I'm trying to make things happen here, but it's not like that. So threat narrative is a big part of it. It's and specifically if you are, for example, wearing the god face, the mask, the so on and so forth, which is something that I do quite frequently in my heavier rituals. One thing to know is that the divine and our realm of existence, all realms of existence, in my learning, I've gathered that we're still made of the same stuff. Like, it's all the same stuff, it's just different. Like, it's in a different place, a different frequency. So Voga and myself and the stars, which we know, the stars and the deities and spirits, we're all overlapping each other, and we are all made of the same thing. So if you are channeling deity or wearing a god face in a ritual, what is to say that you aren't that deity that you're channeling? You're made of the same things. So that's one way in ritual. In my specific practice, I frequently channel Hermes. It works really well for me, and it's scary, like how well it works for me. I'm almost halfway terrified of it. But like the other spirits that you're working with will then recognize you as this deity, because you are the same. You are the same. Like, it's part of that ritual, part of that theater, and then being able to draw the spirits into you and project out. I don't know, like, it sounds like, now that I'm speaking out loud, I feel like I'm like, it's really remedial and I'm talking really stupid, but if you see it happen, you understand it. So
it's definitely not remedial, because the second you were talking about threat narrative, the first thing that popped in my head, and I'm pretty sure Ry is gonna have something to say, is saint punishing. It was it sounds exactly like saint punishing to us, because
is that where people like bury their idols or something? Like they bury the idol? Yeah,
like they'll bury a statue of Saint Joseph upside down in their yard to try to sell their house. Or there are statues of Saint Anthony where the Christ child is actually removable, and there's a little cabinet or little drawer that you can put Jesus in and close it until your petition is granted.
You know, the fun you saying that is directly exactly what I was talking about, because you know how I said Horus will not see his son, or you know, Isis will not see her son Horus. Horus is often um sync what's the word, not synchronized, but it's often conflated with Jesus in some, you know, in a grand scheme. You know, a lot of people say Horus is, it could be, you know, the Kemetic version of Jesus in a lot of ways. So a lot of threat narrative says Horus will not come back if you don't do what I say.
Horus
So
is the god of what?
I feel like it's
Is it solar?
I'm yeah, it's solar, the sun,
The sun, right? Yeah,
the
because
sun.
that's interesting, because one of our friends, Flo, has syncretized Jesus with a sun god. So that there are connections there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, it's like, you know, going back to the PGM. The PGM is meant to work across different systems of belief systems, across different pantheons. So the PGM is a collection. So sorcery in antiquity was a job. You know, it's just like, I'm a sorcerer. What do you need? You know, it's like going to the pharmacist. You're like, I got a wart. Well, here's this cream. Well, I got a wart. Well, here, let me do this ritual for you. It was These are operations that have been tested throughout time that work. And it's almost, not exactly, but it's almost as if they will work if you are approaching this operation from a Judeo-Christian lens, from a Kemetic lens, from a Hellenic lens. Like all of these pantheons and belief systems from that part of the world in that time, you can still use the same operational framework. It still works, and that's evident even in, like we were talking about very early, is the similarities you'll see in a Catholic Mass as you would see in a, you know, a pagan ritual. There's so many similarities because these are the tried and true operations that work regardless of the pantheon.
The structure works, the cadence works, the way that you call upon spirits works, and it works. I don't want to say it's a blanket, because it isn't, and I don't think that's a fair thing to say, but at the same time, these spirits recognize those rhythms. These spirits recognize those ways of working. They recognize how, like, they understand those vibrations of calling upon, like, there is a structure to it. And I have written rites in the structure of a Catholic Mass where, you know, you consume, so, like, there is a sacrifice that you make, and then there is consumption of something that you see as a part of the spirit, which parallels the Eucharist, right? So the only reason why I'm doing is because I like to kind of flip Catholicism on its head, and that's how I practice. And you've seen it firsthand, especially with the rites that I've written and the ones that you've witnessed, is that there is a structure to it that feels like a mass. And then also with, like, the rituals that our friends have written, like the ritual, the Black Mass that Adrian has written, they're all parallel to each other. I'm not saying that they're the same, because they're definitely not, and that wouldn't be fair to say. But the structure does parallel each other. They're very, very similar in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. The parallels there. And then, you know, and this is outside of parody. Outside of parody, they parallel each other so much, because you will find a lot of, as you mentioned, you know, kind of turning Catholicism on its head, being left-hand path, and specifically those that identify as Satanists. A lot of what they do in their rituals are a parody of Christian, of, you know, and that's not diminishing what they are and being a parody. A parody is not necessarily a bad thing, but, like, for example, the Black Mass, it is meant to be a perversion of a Judeo-Christian Mass. Wow, you both looked in the same direction at the same time. But so yeah, like, it's like even beyond the parody of you know, of that in those adversarial belief systems, which I'm a huge fan of adversarial belief systems. It is it's just what works. So it's good. I like it.
One parallel, Cody, that I realized that I thought of when you were talking earlier were like epithets very much like parallel or I guess I should say Catholic litanies parallel the epithets you were saying, because I mean, for instance, like a litany to Mary might include all of her titles such as like Mother of
Hmm.
Sorrows, Star of the Sea, and going over
Yes.
all of those, and I didn't
Hmm.
consider those kind of like similar to epithets
Yeah,
until you kind
those
of
are
brought that up.
absolutely epithets, 100%. So, you know, for example, like a lot of like let's take some of Hecate's epithets. You hear the cool sounding Greek words, right? So Hekate bukolos, for example. Bukolos just means cattle shepherd. Like it's someone who brings people together. That's bukolos. So like Mother of Sorrows, like it's still like if it was translated into Latin or something, then it would sound fancy. But these words, these epithets, are just words that are to be translated. So Chthoniya, for example, is of the earth. Hekate of the earth. Hecate of the underworld, or whatever it may be. Hecate Brimo is Hecate anger, Hecate fire, Hecate rage, whatever it may be. Hecate, any of them really. Botaforba, eater of filth, which is where I got my handle from, the Reverend Eater of Filth. So, which I didn't say that earlier. By the way, everybody follow me, the Reverend Eater of Filth, on Instagram. I'll post a picture of a book once every 6 months, but you can follow Como Witch with 2 V's, it'll be better. Or follow Blasphemy, that's great too. But yeah, like those are absolutely epithets, and that's exactly like you got it. Like it's like the speaking of those aloud is an act of devotion in and of itself, because you're recognizing what they are and what they do, and you're praising that. Now, that also stands to one thing that I always really liked about specifically, deity and our larger things is recognizing the what's the word? I forgot the word, but essentially, like, when people are like, well, what is this person the patron of? What is this person the god of? This, that, or another. The paradoxical nature of deity. For example, let's say Eurynomus, right? Eurynomus is a demon spirit, and it is the eater of flesh, right? It's the eater of the dead, the demon of decomposition, whatever it may be. But there's a paradoxical nature, because whatever a spirit may be recognized as being like, they're really good for this, which I always hated looking at it like that, but they're like, this person's really good for this, like, no. But but like the paradoxical nature of the divine, it means they're also really good at the opposite. So like, not only is venerating like Eurynomus for decomposition, but Eurynomus can also be really helpful in someone building themselves back up. And you could also say the eater of flesh is that they help strip away the negative outlook that we have on ourselves to rebuild ourselves, and things like that. Baal's another big one like that. Baal is there's a lot of like creative endeavors and money there, but invisibility is also a really big one, that people would actually incorporate Baal into their ritual because they don't want it to be seen, right? Well, you can also kind of incorporate Baal into like your own, like, helping to find something, because they bring things to light as well as hide things from light. So that's what a really cool thing about epithets too, is that when you see all the epithets written out, you're just like, these actually contradict each other. It's because the gods contradict themselves by being everything. Like Mary, yes, is the mother of sorrows, but she's this, that, or the other, and it's all still the entity that is Mary, but there's so many different
Aspects. Yeah. No,
aspects and facets
100%.
of what they are.
Well, that's what I mean. I venerate specifically the aspect of Mary that I venerate specifically as Our Lady of Sorrows, who I see as the aspect of Mary that is closely related to death.
Mhm.
But the thing about it is the general sense of who Mary is the mother of life.
Mhm.
It is both. They are. I mean, she is both, not
Mhm.
because she experienced death, because in the lore she never died. She was granted eternal life, but someone who experienced death in a different way,
Mhm.
who witnessed death, but also is the bearer of life, the one who experienced the Immaculate Conception, who is able to bring forth I'm going to put quotes around this, the Savior. And so she is the aspect of both death and life, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
Not because she actually experienced death, or because she is some sort of psychopomp, which I don't see her that way. I don't see her as a psychopomp, but because she is someone who experienced death in a very specific way. But also experienced life in a very specific way. It's the way that she experienced both was very specific to her. The thing that brought the thing that the person that she brought to life, she also had to witness die in a very specific way. So yeah, I do that there is a contrast to who she is, but it works in different ways depending on how you see it.
Absolutely, and and from my perspective too, let's say Hecate. So Hecate, as a liminality transition, crossroads. My personal, like, Enodia is another big one. For example, Enodia is of the sea, the sea and the raging seas and everything that happens there. But from my perspective, I choose to venerate, the Thonia and Brimo and Idonia, of the dead, and Thonia because I incorporate a lot of necromantic work into what I do, and demonic, and then of course Brimo because I'm spicy, and like I'll throw hands if I need to, I guess, but but so but at the same time, there's also Soteria, which is savior, like Hecate Soteria. She is the savior of the downtrodden, and those falsely imprisoned, and so on and so forth. So that's like Brimo, Medusa. So Hecate Medusa, in that epithet, Medusa's protector. That's what that means, protector. So she's the protector, but she's also Brimo, which is fury, anger, fuck you up. So like, yeah, it's both and one at the same time. So it's fun. It's fun.
Ry, do you have something?
I just wanted to say, it's also fascinating into to what you were bringing up, Cody, of just like kind of how the spirits that can be like quote unquote used or utilized for something in particular are also good for their opposites. I never thought of it that way. That's really enlightening.
Yeah.
Like, just as much as Mary, mother of sorrows, she can also be a mother of joy, and that's just one of many possible examples. Or Saint Michael, I know, is utilized or worked with for justice, but also in a sense retribution too. So rebalancing of the scales. So it's just when you put it that way, it just made me think about the ways I hadn't thought about certain spirits.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the divine in their nature of existence is paradoxical to begin with. So like there's every bit of evidence to support that their strengths are also paradoxical too. So like they're big, they can do a lot. so I mean, some might be better than others, but I also don't I don't think of it like as a supermarket either. Like it's just like, well, I want to fall in love, so I'm gonna like talk to Aphrodite. Well, I want some money, so I'm gonna look up Nereus in Norse pantheon. Like I don't cherry pick like that. But at the same time, some spirits are easier to do with others in other ways, which is kind of where the demonic came into play with my practice, which we haven't touched on too much. But in my specific opinion, when you have something as large as, Hecate, as I mentioned, way up there, hypercosmic, like transition. Usually the dirty work, like the actual work that that the things that are supporting you, are not actually. I don't think she's actually like coming in and be like, here, let me open that door for you. It's it's the daemon in her employ, the spirits that she commands that do these things, and whether they be the actual demons that we're familiar with, like the whole Goetia, or whether they be like smaller level, lower level demonic. That's where that interaction comes from something more closer to the mundane that can interact with our reality a little bit more than on a grander scale. Because I feel like if Hecate was to be like, okay, you don't want to go to work today, well, let's flood the ocean or something, it would be too much. It'd just be too much. We need something smaller. So just like, just make it snow. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't think of it that way, but it's just, there's spirits are a lot more helpful in our day-to-day lives than something is a big cosmic entity. So
Well, I think that's a really good segue into talking about demons. I think
yeah.
that's a really important thing that we should talk about, because working closely with Cody within the last couple of years, I've become a little bit more familiar with what that looks like, and what that feels like, because I've said this before, blasphemy is not just a market, it is a ritual, and it's something that I have experienced as a little Catholic girl in this sea of demon worshippers and devil worshippers and Luciferians. It's something that I quickly got very, very comfortable with, which is something that I never thought I would ever do, because it's not what you think it is. I think there are a lot of misconceptions as to what that actually means and what that actually looks like and what that actually feels like. So I think it's a really good time for us to really talk about, Cody, what does that actually mean? Like, working with demons, what is that?
Yeah, so exactly that. So a demon unfortunately has gotten a bad rap. We use the term demon to kind of identify spirits that are of a certain. I don't like using the term hierarchy because I think there's importance all over the place. Like hierarchy doesn't feel right, because it's not that one's more important than the other. I don't see it that way. But the demons are the spiritual entities that are closer to our frequency, and so I would say that, with all due respect, they could be closer to how the saints or Mary or something like that could interact, because they experience our
You are 100%.
yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand. They are. They're not at a necessarily a human level, because they are not human, but they are
Right.
the closest that you can actually get to.
Yeah, without having been human, or without being the land spirits. Now, however, land spirits can also be demonic as well, because demonic, again, that's kind of a blanket term. Daemon is divine intelligence. That's all that means, divine intelligence. So it's a spirit that has consciousness, that can think, more or less. So and in fact, you frequently will see, like, especially like as we get older and we learn more about the history, that's not been through the lens of our school system, and whatever it may be, we find out that a lot of the named demons that we know are actually just the gods of other civilizations anyway. So that's Memo and Baal, like Beelzebub, so on, or whatever it may be. So these entities exist closer to us in this grand sphere of existence, and they can affect our lives in a much smaller level, on in a way. That's why, like I said, it's just like if there's something that I need to find, or I need help, having something brought to light, typically I would rely on a demonic spirit for that. And not only that, like, I do see that there is some primordial essence in there too, specifically when you have like the bigger ones. It feels dumb to say like the bigger ones, but like when you talk about Leviathan, for example. Leviathan I would consider demonic because I don't see it as a deity. But at the same time, Leviathan is kind of well, definitely like a water energy, but not necessarily the spirit of water, but more the energy of water. Does that make sense? Like, it's the force that is water, not the spiritual essence of water, but the force that is water. And the force that is your emotion is kind of really aligned with like Leviathan, for example. And then of course you have Flerius being flame, and Lucifer being air, but Lucifer conflated with most of the time, like when you hear Lucifer, like a lot of people would say, well, the fallen angel, celestial. I don't necessarily think that Lucifer, for example, is celestial, but I do think that there's some overlap there. Lucifer is definitely a higher vibrational demonic, but I think that that's kind of where we got the mythology of Prometheus. In that sense, the bringer of light, the bringer of knowledge, and kind of the driving force of Gnosticism in general is a very Luciferian idea. But that's reverting back, because I digressed, but reverting back, that's air, which we all kind of know those things, right? Our elemental, like what elements are kind of there, it all like lines up. And so my demonic work is a lot of that. It's not scary. It's not me like sitting there carving pentagrams on my forehead. Although I might do that. I don't know. If I want to, I will. But I mean, it's just a spiritual
circumstance.
Yeah. It's, they like what they like.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a different hierarchy of spiritual entity that we can help manipulate our mundane lives through acts of devotion, or through acts of or agreements, or so on and so forth, like and they understand our emotions a little better, and they also revel in the speaking of their names. I feel like, in one way that I described it when I was really young, I was very, very young, probably like high school, and first actually getting into legitimate, like, I guess you could say theistic Satanism, instead, like I read LaVey back in like middle school, and then high school I started learning a lot more, and kind of more theistic approach. Let's say, for example, like the demonic in their realm, they don't feel there's no source of love, right? No source of love, like they don't love each other, so they get their love from us, or their admiration, or their veneration, whatever you want to say. At the end of the day, it's love. Love is probably one of the strongest driving forces in all creation. So that's why us feeling good and us being grateful for the help that they get makes them feel good too. To simplify things, I'm not saying that they're our friends. It's not like that, but you can develop good standing with certain spirits, in my opinion. So, and and that's a common like concept in all sorts of whether you're a demonologist or a demonologist, or a theistic Satanist, so on and so forth, is your standing, your some will call it rank, so on and so forth. It's not like that, in my opinion, but it's developing favor with the spirit, like yeah, I mean, how could you not develop favor if you're doing things that make something feel appreciated or loved? To simplify, of course you would develop favor, and they'll be happy to help. So that's kind of how I see it. So yeah, it's in my opinion, yeah, the demons are spirits that are more, they're easier to work with, they're easier to contact. That's why I think that so many people are just like, demon is always on like the tip of our tongues. Whenever there's something spooky, we're just like, oh, it must be a demon, because we experience demons more than we do anything else, outside of like ghosts, or
Right.
but a ghost that's ancestral spirit, so they're
Right.
formerly human,
Right.
so of course we're going to experience them more. But demons are pretty close too, so we're going to experience them more. So, because as I mentioned, in my opinion, string theory, we're all overlapping in our planes of existence anyway. So like, it's probably one right here. I don't know, but maybe could be.
Well, hanging out with you, I'm pretty sure I've taken a couple home. So
yeah, because I don't do that lesser pentagram banishment stuff. They can all stay. It's fine.
they can all just they can hang out.
They can all stay. Like,
Yeah.
because I had Franny come and water the plants, and Franny's like, there was something definitely like here, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't banish anything. I'm like, no, you can chill. It's fine. Just don't break anything. Like, what? It's just like I don't mind. Like, as long as nothing feels threatening or nothing feels like it's. I mean, we've all felt negative energies. We've all felt it. As long as I don't feel a negativity or something that's not got my best interest in mind, or anything like that, I have no reason to expel you. Like, it's fine. So yeah, I don't usually, the ones that I have actively worked with, I want them to feel welcome in my spaces, so they're welcome to stay around as long as they want. No banishment.
Go ahead, Ray.
Oh no, I was gonna start asking about resources, but I didn't want to segue to that unless you had anything else you wanted to ask.
Yeah, I actually had it popped into my brain. It's going back to Hecate, especially because, like, I mean, it's dwindled down a whole bunch, especially the conversation. I don't think that witchcraft is trendy anymore, so I don't think that this conversation is really. I mean, Cody, you and I have spoken about how the reason why sometimes business is bad is because witchcraft isn't like cool anymore. But also, I think at the same time, I think people are just doing the work now. I think they've learned a lot of stuff, and I think people are just doing work, and they're kind of learning more. But I want your opinion on kind of like this social media presence of what Hecate has become, and how. Yeah, did you see the just his face just lit up? The social media presence of what Hecate is on social media, and how folks should discern what is and what isn't.
Absolutely. Okay. So
also, what's the proper pronunciation?
There isn't one.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. So I mean, and technically, I mean, Hecate's name, we don't know it. The closest that we can do is like it's crazy. It's bore 4 by hour. Like it's meant to, so Hecate epipistante is the barking of a dog. That's the presence of Hecate. So Hecate's name is actually the barking of a dog. So when written out, it's bore 4 bow. But you could say Hecate, you could say Hecate, you can say Hecate. Like, none of them are wrong. And if anyone like argues with you about that, they're just full of themselves, because there's really no wrong way to say it. They could be like, ooh, but in Greek it's Hekate. Well, it's not ancient Greek. It's not. So ancient Greek, it's Hekate. So it's fine. It doesn't matter. She don't care. Like, so yeah, whatever works. I mean, I know that I've said both. I mean, it's like kilometer, kilometer. They're both technically right? So you get the idea. But as far as like, Hecate's presence in social media and or pop culture, whatever it may be, it really, I don't like it. Like, I don't like it. I don't like it, not because I'm like an elitist or a gatekeeper. It's nothing like that. But I think that it's gotten really, I don't want to say perverted, but it's been mistranslated completely. And I think this is due to maybe, I mean, I was in the thick of it. Like, let's go witch talk. I was there. Like, that's how I rose to prominence, was that first drive of witch talk. My partner and my wife, Como Witch, we got very popular on witch talk, and a lot of people, with magical practice gaining popularity, there was a lot of confusing ideas out there, and all tea, all shade, Wiccans, and this shoebox witch this and no hate to the publishing group Llewellyn, but like these Llewellyn witches, right? They just read some Llewellyn books and they're witches. They took like they took what they perceived as the goddess of witchcraft, and they started applying all these ideas to it. And it's not that. It's not that at all. Like, I cannot stand, just because Hecate is three-formed, trimorphos, so far, maiden mother crone is not it. It's not it. There's no maiden mother crone, and to what Hecate is. That doesn't exist. That was something that was created, modernly to kind of conflate her with the New Age Earth goddess, and not necessarily for the wrong reasons, because I do appreciate the celebration of the divine feminine in the stages of life of the woman, for example, like as a divine entity of maiden mother crone. That's not Hecate. Hecate don't have no kids. Like there's I don't like that, but I do appreciate people. I do appreciate seeing people actually do the work as far as trying to learn more, because that's the most important thing that you can do. Is it's one thing to we all see it, like with celebrities and stuff, they're just like, oh yeah, they're a witch, they're a witch, they're a witch. That's easy to do, but it's easy to say that. But when I see evidence of someone actually taking the effort they put in to learn, and as I mentioned, active devotion, your scholarship is an act of devotion, I love seeing that. So I do love seeing, and I also love seeing like rituals. I love it. Like, I can watch it all day. But yeah, I don't like the house of intuition, like interpretation of Hecate. So I don't care. Come after me. It's fine. So
no, that's okay. This is a safe place to speak on certain things.
Yeah, I talk a lot of shit. I talk shit, apparently.
No, I know,
so.
I know. I know.
So
house of intuition is very specific.
Yeah,
but
it's
I'm gonna leave
not
that there.
It's not the actual business itself. It's the our Pacific Palisades white girl with a.
It's a very specific demographic, yeah. And I'm not here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that this is invalid or valid in any way. It's just not what we do, and it's not what we're talking about.
Right.
That certain demographic is different, and it is.
Yeah.
Not
whatever makes you happy is great. Whatever makes you happy is great. Absolutely, whatever makes you happy is great. But I'm gonna make fun of your shoes. Like, it's gonna happen. Like it's gonna happen. So, but yeah, it's really great to see like people that are like expanding their knowledge beyond what they've seen at at a surface level, and I love seeing that. I love seeing that because I am seeing more of that. And it's really exciting. And this isn't just like Hecate in specific. It's practice in general. Given that all of our friends, like, we have a wide array of like actual beliefs. Like, there's no two of us actually have exactly the same praxis.
No,
and
it's very vast.
That's wonderful. That's such a wonderful thing. I love it. And so me having interaction with all these people exposes me to a lot of different things that I just really enjoy seeing. I mean, that's like what we're saying. It's like, oh, Cody's a scholar. Well, that's what I do. I just want to learn about everything. I have books on stuff that I will never actually incorporate into my practice, but I want to know about it. And so I just spend all my money on books and read about it so I can talk to people about it, I guess. I don't know.
Well, no, but that's exactly the reason why we invite folks like you onto the show, why we have folks who have a different perspective and a different way of practicing, and also a different praxis and a different cosmology, because that's exactly why it's important for us to, it's not about us, it's about the community. And like what you were talking about, how you appreciate and you respect the fact that people are actually doing the work. The way to do that is to get off of your phone and be part of the community. It's being part of that community who is actually doing the work. That's the reason why Blasphemy is so important, because that is community. That is going to a certain place that is delegated for a certain group of people that have these experiences and are willing to share. There are folks who come to our booth who are Santa Muerte devotees. I can almost guarantee you most of the people who are coming to Blasphemy are not Catholic, but then they come to the altar at Vita Mortis and they're just like, this is a Catholic business? It's like, kind of. It's a different kind of Catholic. And then we have to, kind of talk them through it and see, this is the reason why we exist here, is because we're all just trying to coexist and we're all trying to share each other's experiences, and they all work together. Like what you said, like our immediate circle of friends, no one's practice looks the same. Everyone looks so different, and the way that we practice looks so different. The way that we take ourselves home looks different from how we present ourselves to each other. It varies all the time. So, and like I said, this is the reason why we bring folks like you and Adrian, who have such different practices and different cosmologies and different belief systems than we do, because it's important to be aware of it, because this is how you learn, and this is also how you avoid miscommunication, misinformation, and how it kind of like opens the doors to like resources and like ways of thinking, and also the most important, perspective, the way people live their lives. That's the way. That is literally, personally, this is my personal belief. That is the key to world peace, is perspective. Is understanding other people's perspective and being actually trying to be as open as possible to it. Because if my friends weren't open to my perspective, then I wouldn't have you guys as friends. It just wouldn't happen. But that wasn't the case. So
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's why, I mean, a lot of people would think it's kind of strange, being that, and you and I have actually mentioned this several times to people, specifically when we're talking to people about blasphemy. But beyond that, is you and I have, as you mentioned, gotten very, very close, and we've gotten to be very good friends. But we're polar opposites as far as what our belief systems are, but in our talking to each other through the years, we've realized that there's so much more that's the same.
Yeah, our morals and our values.
There's not the human part of our practice is almost identical, and that's what we as a community focus on, and that's what we celebrate. Well, I mean, we celebrate the differences too, absolutely, but like that's what brought us together, and that's what holds us together, and that's why, like, regardless of like commerce, beyond commerce of it being a market, that's why I wholeheartedly believe that there's no stronger community in the Los Angeles area than the blasphemy community, period. So
I 100% agree. That's the best way to put it. I don't think there is a stronger community than the blasphemy community. Absolutely.
So, and yeah, I mean, the market's great, and the shows are great, but what we've been able to do outside of the market, we all still talk to each other. We're all still there for each other. We become friends, and we become, I hate being like, well, we're family, because I'm white collar, I work at a corporation, and when your boss says we're a family, that's a red flag, right? But we are like, and that's like, it's not a joke when Voga or Franny or Necro or Jeff or anybody comes over and we're like, oh, Auntie Franny's coming over, oh, Auntie Voga's coming over, oh, Uncle Jeff's coming over. It's not a joke. It's not something we take lightly, because it's become this like bond that we just, it's gross.
It's so gross. It's so yucky. it's more of a family than I've ever. Well, that's not true because my family's kind of like that too. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it's like it really does. We do have a family dynamic, and that's not
Mhm.
just our immediate circle of friends. That's the entire community. Like
Yeah.
we know each other by name, and there
Yeah.
are times where they'll come to us and be like, "Hey, I have to do this event outside. Does anyone have a 10-foot canopy I can borrow?" And then we're
Mhm.
just like, "I do." You know,
Someone
that's,
always will.
someone always will. Yeah, exactly. But Ry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Cody, for everything you've shared. I always like to cap off episodes, or we like to cap off episodes, like asking for resources. Or so, what are some of your favorite resources for anyone who might want to dive more into any subjects or topics that you brought up during this,
Yeah, right.
episode? Yeah, right. The whole bookshelves.
So that's my biggest resource. I read. I read. So my biggest resources, I would say, I'm, for me personally, like I I have specific authors that I really latch on to. I really, of course, like as I mentioned, Jack Grail is number one for me. I really appreciate what Jeff Cullen has done in regards to Librethonia. A lot of publishers I like too, but there, it's just, I would say, my number one resource is there are occult book collectors Facebook groups and all that stuff. If you're an old man like me and you're like, how do I get on Facebook? But but like just like go to your occult bookstore, go to your local occult bookstore, or come to Blasphemy, or or go to miskatonicbooks.com and just see the available titles are there, and just see what catches your interest. Like it's really like that simple. But that's really, it's just books. I love them. Like
Yeah.
I just collect them and spend too much money on them. But yeah, as far as like online communities, I don't know, because I feel like it got kind of, I don't like using the buzzword toxic, but I think that online communities can be kind of problematic, whether it be miseducation or the polar opposite of gatekeeping. Like it's all bad in my opinion. Just pursue knowledge. Period. That's all. That's all. Like so, your local bookstore, your local occult bookstore is the best resource. Or like talk to us.
Yeah, I was just
Like
about
just
to
talk
say.
to us. Like
I was about to say, there's nothing, there's no other resource more valuable than the human experience. So talk
Yeah.
to somebody.
yeah, just talk to your friends or people that 9 times out of 10, like your actual like legitimate practitioners and stuff like that. Like and it can be hard to discern. It can absolutely be hard to discern. But if you reach out with a question, most of us will talk to you. I don't know many that are just like, oh, you're a baby witch. I hate that term, baby witch, by the way. But
No, so
but
do I.
like,
It's okay.
it's like, you're not a baby. You can be a novice. Novice is fine, but you're not a baby. But like, yeah, it's like, just talk to people, and you'll find that people will be more open and sharing their experiences with you, because at the end of the day, so much of what we do is UPG anyway.
Right.
So like, find out other people's personal gnosis. Like it's a wonderful thing. Like, and then the Franny came to me and was like, hey, I'm experiencing this, I'm just like, oh, I got you, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I was able to, just because they talked to me about it, they were able to find some answers there. Just talk. Best resource, your friends and strangers too, I guess. So
I love talking to strangers. That's my favorite thing in the entire world.
I like it too. I do it too much.
Yeah, I know.
Almost like, stop. Just, we got something to do. We gotta go. So I ain't never met a stranger.
Never made a stranger. Yeah, that's right. You've never met a stranger.
I
That's Cody's MO for sure.
So yeah, thank you, Cody, for joining us for this episode today. We really appreciate everything you have to offer, especially your time and energy and all the knowledge and expertise you have in your area. And for our listeners, if you want to just drop your handle one more time and anywhere that you can be reached, or anything you offer in terms of like services or anything like that.
Absolutely. And thank you both so much for having me. It's been really great. I love talking, about stuff without structure. Like, I like just bullshitting, so I love it. Yeah, I am on Instagram, of course, at the Reverend Eater of Filth, but it would probably be a better idea. My wife, Coma Witch, would probably be best. She has a business, makes just wonderful, wonderful occult products. And that's Comowitch, with 2 V's, VVITCH, or comowitch.com. You know, always making stuff. And, we do all sorts of services, as far as like, rituals or spells or weddings, whatever you want. You can reach out to me directly. I can work with you. And then, aside from that, I would definitely ask to follow Blasphemy. Like Voga and I put a lot of our energy into building the community, and Voga, Coma, and I put a lot of energy into building that community and making it the best market event, social gathering possible. And we're going to do a better job next time. It's always going to be growing and improving. And, we love having people there, and we love people joining the community with us. So be sure and follow that as well, at Blasphemy on Instagram or blasphemy.com. Other than that, you should probably follow at Voga Illumiscente. And what was it again?
Mestizo Mystic.
And the Mestizo Mystic. Yeah, I didn't want to say it wrong. The Mestizo Mystic. You should probably be following those two. I would recommend that. And
if y'all have been listening to this podcast, you're not following us yet. Like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
Yeah.
Grow up.
Yeah. So
thank you for plugging us. That's so nice of you.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a good time.
Well, it's always a joy to talk to you. So thank you for coming.
And with that said, y'all, this has been another Unholy Communion. I'm your co-host, Ry, aka the Mestizo Mystic on Instagram.
And my name is Voga Illumisente.
And I am the Reverend Eater of Filth, Cody. And have a good night.
And we'll see you on our next Unholy Communion.